Caleb Owens had been gone 7 years. Not missing, just absent, quiet, unreadable, like a man erased without notice. Then, last Friday, he walked into Magnolia's on 17th Street and asked for a table. No cameras, no entourage, just him, in a slate suit, clean lines, and a face everyone remembered from TV. Though few could place why their chest tightened when they saw him. The hostess blinked like she'd seen a ghost. He waited for her to speak. She didn't. Instead, a manager sweating through his collar appeared and blocked the entrance with a forced grin and an apology wrapped in the word policy. What they didn't know, what no one at the restaurant could have known, was who he'd become in those 7 years, and what he'd seen. The denial was swift, subtle, a polite smile, a closing of the reservation book without opening it. Behind him, a baby in a high chair said, clearly, and without context, "Don't let him in." The mother turned white, her fork slipped from her hand. The baby had never spoken a word before that day. That clip never made it to social media, but it existed, stored in a backup server belonging to the restaurant's PA's system. An assistant manager found it 3 days later while doing inventory reconciliation. At 2:06 a.m., he emailed the clip to himself. By 3:11 a.m., his apartment door was wide open, his wallet still on the table, his dog barking at the ceiling. He hasn't been found. Most people think stories like this are exaggerated, twisted up for views. But what happened next wasn't just a headline, it was a rupture. 1 week after the denied service, Caleb returned, same suit. This time with the mayor, not for revenge, for dinner. But when they sat down, the mayor's face changed, went pale, like she'd seen her own autopsy report. And then she whispered something across the table that made Caleb's hand stop mid-air. The server swears she heard nothing, but the bartender saw it, said. Caleb's eyes glazed over like someone just told him a memory he'd never known was his. The strangest part, there's no record of the mayor's visit. Not in the restaurant logs, not in city records, no car pickup, no phone pings. Like she never left home that night, or never returned. But what keeps people awake, those few who know what they saw? The photo someone leaked from inside that night. It's grainy, like it wasn't taken by a phone, but by something older. A single shot, Caleb, the mayor, a table between them. And behind them, in the restaurant's mirror clear as daylight, someone who'd died 5 years ago. She was smiling. But she wasn't smiling at Famda, she was smiling at the camera. The photo was deleted within 6 minutes of being posted. Not flagged, not reported, deleted, like someone reached in and plucked it from the internet's lungs before it could breathe. But 6 minutes is forever when fear is involved. People screen capped, they zoomed, they enhanced, and then they stopped talking about it altogether. Like their silence was a pact made in panic. Caleb hadn't seen the image until the following morning. His assistant showed it to him through trembling fingers on a cracked iPad, the kind with duct tape on the corner. She didn't speak. She just turned the screen toward him and waited. He stared for a long time, not at the woman in the mirror, but at his own reflection next to her, the precise curve of his shoulder, the slight tilt of his head, and how his own eyes weren't looking at the mayor. They were looking directly into the mirror. He never blinked. The mayor was gone by then. No press conference, no scheduled meetings, no messages. Caleb reached out to her chief of staff, but the voice that answered on the other end wasn't him. It wasn't anyone he knew. It wasn't, right? It was static first, then breathing. Then the words, "you shouldn't have come back," and then just click. He checked the call history. Nothing was logged. The number never appeared. By noon, he couldn't remember what the mayor had whispered. He couldn't even remember what he ordered at the restaurant, or what the server looked like. He tried to draw the layout of the dining room and found himself sketching the inside of a motel room he hadn't seen since 1998, with yellow wallpaper and a red handprint on the curtain. He never told anyone about that night, not even his therapist back in '07. But there it was, bright, real, like it had been waiting behind everything else. That's when she called. Hannah Royce. Not a friend, not exactly. They'd met in the kind of grief support group that wasn't supposed to exist for people like them. People who hadn't lost anyone but were still grieving things they couldn't name. She had that look, back then, the kind of pretty that felt accidental, like trauma made her more photogenic. She said she remembered him. He didn't remember her. "I need to show you something," she said, her voice flat, like she was reading off a cue card. They met in a parking garage underneath a closed-down daycare, 3 blocks from where Caleb's mother once disappeared. She handed him a cassette tape. Not a USB, not a drive. A tape, black, with a smudged label, *number 54 dining room feed, -4/9. "I found this in a Goodwill donation box in Denver," she said, already walking away. "I think it's yours." It wasn't, but when he touched it, he felt like he was holding something he'd buried. That night, in his office, he dusted off an old tape deck from storage, plugged it into the wall, and hit play. The first 2 minutes were silence. Then the soft ambient clatter of a restaurant. Forks, murmurs, someone laughing too hard. Then a voice's voice, clear and slow. Asterisk, I don't think this is real. Asterisk, he stopped the tape. Hands shaking. Pressed play again. Same voice. Again. Asterisk, I don't think this is real. Asterisk, but Caleb hadn't said that. Not at the restaurant. Not ever. The tape continued. A second voice now. Hers, the mayor. You're not who they think you are. Then a long, heavy pause. Silverware against ceramic. Ice clinking in a glass. Then, the same baby's voice, distorted now. Asterisk, don't let him in. The audio warped, screeched. Then the mayor again. We knew this would happen when you started remembering. We just didn't think you'd come back here. Then a sound like dragging, and finally, you weren't supposed to remember me. Asterisk click, the tape ejected itself. That night, Caleb stood in the hallway of his own home, unable to open any door. Without forgetting why, he touched his walls, but they didn't feel like his paint color, seemed off like someone had come in during the day and switched it by a single hue. And in the reflection of the hallway mirror, he saw himself watching. Not mimicking, not reflecting, just watching. When he turned around, no one was there. The days got looser after that. Memory slurred. He'd look at the clock and hours would vanish. Voices whispered in vents. Old voicemails appeared in his inbox, dated back 15 years. One from his mother, recorded 2 weeks after her official death certificate was signed. She was crying. He isn't real. Caleb, he isn't real. Then silence. But when he replayed the message later that night, her voice was replaced with his. Whispering the same sentence, he told Hannah everything. She didn't flinch. She just sat on his floor, eating cereal from a coffee mug and nodding like she'd heard it all before. They do this when you start remembering, she said, not meeting his eyes. They remove the edges first, then the middle. Eventually, you're just walking through a version of yourself they created. Who's they? She stared at him then. But it wasn't anger. It was recognition. You told me once, she whispered. You said not to tell you if it ever started again. You said forgetting was the only way to survive it. And for a moment, the fear was less than the heartbreak. Because she believed it, and a part of him did too. Caleb went back to the restaurant. Magnolia's the exact time, the exact table, but it wasn't there. The building was boarded up, yellow tape across the glass. A sign that read, asterisk location closed since 2018. New development coming soon. Asterisk he checked his phone. The date was June 2025. But the dinner happened last week. The address on the tape, LABEL, 4/9, was no longer in any GPS system. Street names had shifted. City plans redrawn. He searched the city archives and found no permits for a business named Magnolia's in the past 10 years. But there were photos. Not of the restaurant, of the building burned down in 2016. Fatality, unidentified male. Late 30s, found seated at a table. Face. Palms open. No burns, no smoke inhalation, just gone. The file was sealed. But it had a case ID number 54, the same number from the tape. That night, Caleb dreamed of a dinner that never happened. The mayor sitting across from him, her mouth moving, but no sound. Behind her, the mirror, and in the mirror, not her, just the woman, smiling, holding the same cassette. He woke up with dried blood under his nose, and the feeling that something had been said in his sleep, something recorded. He checked his phone. The voice memo app was open. 1 file. 1 minute. 44 seconds. No title. He pressed play. The static was sharp. Then came his voice. Asterisk, if they're listening, I remember. I remember the motel. I remember the red curtain. I remember the girl who never blinked. Then another voice. Younger. Female. Do you remember what you did? Asterisk, then nothing. Just silence. Long, cold, until the final whisper. Asterisk, then they'll come for you again. Asterisk, he dropped the phone, and outside, under the streetlight stood Hannah, holding the same mirror from the restaurant, and behind her, in the reflection, was him, but not moving, not blinking. Just smiling. It started with the hospital record routine. Unremarkable, buried inside a manila folder that hadn't been touched since 1997. Caleb found it in his father's old safe deposit box. The one no one talked about after the funeral. The one he wasn't supposed to have a key to, but he did. Found it in a suit jacket pocket that hadn't been worn in decades. In a jacket he didn't remember owning. The paper was brittle and soft at the edges, with that aged yellow curl that only came from being untouched for a very long time. Asterisk patient. Owens, Caleb J. Asterisk age, 11. Diagnosis, transitory dissociative event. Duration, 9 hours. Location, asterisk Magnolia. Children's Behavioral Center. Asterisk, not a restaurant, not a dining room, a facility. The name had always been there, hidden in plain sight. And just like that, everything seemed to make sense. It wasn't a restaurant. It wasn't even recent. It was a recovered episode, a fractured pocket of childhood trauma leaking into the present. The tape, the mirror, the vanishing building, it was all memory. A glitch. Some archived pain resurfacing now that Caleb had reached some critical, subconscious threshold. He even remembered the curtains from that motel, The voice on the cassette, the woman in the mirror, his therapist. Dr. Adina Merrill. Short, red hair, cool voice. Always said his mind was like a room with too many locked doors. They had called what happened back then a coping fracture. A disassociation so total he'd rebuilt reality from scratch. That, and suddenly, it fit. Like a zipper, finally closing. He shared it with Hannah, convinced he was at the edge of freedom. She sat still, as he explained, eyes locked, breathing shallow. She didn't interrupt. When he finished, she nodded, slowly, like someone being told. The end of a long and confusing dream. I remember that building, she whispered. My cousin stayed there. Back in '96, he had night terrors. They said it was genetic. That sometimes, kids just split. That's what this was, Caleb said. It's not a haunting, it's just memory architecture. Bleeding into now, but she didn't look relieved. She looked scared. That night, Caleb slept for the first time in weeks. Full sleep, deep, dreamless. When he awoke, everything felt clearer. The voices were gone. The reflections matched. Even the tape wouldn't play anymore. It just hissed and clicked. Dead magnetism. He showered, shaved, dressed like it was all behind him. He even drafted an email to the mayor's office, politely requesting a follow-up. He didn't expect a reply, but it felt symbolic. A gesture of closure. At 3:12 p.m., an envelope slid under his front door. It wasn't mailed. There was no stamp, no handwriting, just his name typed, printed in that same institutional font from the hospital folder. Inside was a photograph, black and white, slightly overexposed. It showed a child, maybe 11, sitting at a table in what appeared to be a cafeteria. Everything about it felt faded, ordinary. Except the mirror on the far wall. In it, the boy wasn't sitting. He was standing. And behind him, in the mirror but nowhere else in the photo, was Hannah, smiling. But Hannah wasn't in his life back then, not in memory, not in the files, not in anything. He rushed to find her. Her number was gone from his phone. Every text thread gone. He ran to the garage, checked the tape deck, missing. The mirror in his hallway now had fingerprints. On the inside, tiny prints, like a child's hand had been pressed there, trying to get out. He called the city archives, asked for Dr. Adina Merrill's licensing record. Sorry, the voice said, we don't have a Dr. Merrill in our records. Are you sure you have the right name? He was sure. He remembered her office, the blue carpet, the ticking metronome, the way she used to touch her necklace when he got close to the truth. He described it in detail. I don't think you understand, the voice said again. There is no Magnolia Children's Behavioral Center. That building was condemned in 1989. That's impossible, Caleb whispered. I was treated there in '97. The voice was quiet for a moment. Then came the sound of another phone being picked up, slow, deliberate. A second voice joined in. We know who you are. Click. The world. Tilted. He raced to find Hannah, the old-fashioned Waynebar's mutual friends, coffee shop clerks. Nobody knew her, nobody remembered her. The group therapy office where they'd met, boarded up. No records, no attendee logs. He drove out to Denver. The Goodwill she'd claimed to have found the tape had burned down 6 years ago. But he found one thing, one clue, tucked between two Bibles in a Salvation Army book bin on the outskirts of Aurora. Another cassette. This one unlabeled. He played it in his car. It began with silence, then static, then asterisk. Caleb, you made a deal when you were 11. You promised not to look. You promised not to remember. His own voice responded, younger, fragile, but I have to. It's mine. Asterisk. Then, her voice again, deeper now, like it came through layers of time and walls and mirrors. Asterisk. You don't own any of this. We let you think you did. Asterisk. The tape cut out. And Caleb vomited on the side of the road, because he remembered. Now, it wasn't therapy, it was conditioning. Every session, every blue-carpeted hour, under that metronome, was meant to bear, not heal, to rewrite, to tuck away something no 11-year-old should have ever seen. Something they didn't want him to remember. A dinner, a table, but not a restaurant. Not food, not people, just Caleb and two men in suits, talking calmly, quietly, showing him photos, diagrams, asking him questions about a girl who didn't blink, about a voice he heard when the radio wasn't on, about why he kept writing the same sentence over and over in crayon. Asterisk. She's behind the mirror again. They gave him something afterward. Not medicine. Something colder. Something that watched. Asterisk. He remembered. Finally, what the girl in the mirror had whispered. Don't let him in. She said, asterisk, don't trust the quiet ones. They remember too much. Asterisk. And suddenly, the mayor's vanishing, the glitches, the baby speaking his name. It wasn't about him going crazy, it was about him waking up, about the system fraying. He thought he was the one unraveling, but it wasn't him, it was them. The thing, the force that had been watching, shaping, whispering through vents and mirrors and memories. Wasn't coming, it had always been here, in his home, in the therapy, in Hannah, because now he remembered everything. She wasn't someone he met. She was someone they inserted. In that motel in 1998, the one he kept drawing, He never left. The memory he thought was waking life was the real fracture. He looked at his hands, smaller. He touched his face, smooth, no stubble, no suit. He was in the motel room. He had always been in the motel room. The life outside of it, the CEO, the assistant, the restaurant, the mirror, all manufactured. A loop, a projection, a punishment. Because of what he saw that night, what they made him forget, and as he turned to the red curtain one last time, it moved on its own, and she stepped out, not aged, not changed. The same smiling, double quotes, ready to try again. She asked, and he screamed, because her eyes weren't hers, they were his. They started showing up. In photographs Caleb didn't take. Slipped between emails with no subject lines. Faces he didn't recognize, but somehow knew, people standing in the corners of crowded spaces, cafes, grocery stores, blurred in motion, but always looking directly into the lens. He would scroll through his gallery and find photos taken at times he couldn't account for. 3:03 a.m., 4:17 a.m., all grayscale, all shot from eye level, as if someone had been holding the phone just in front of him while he slept. One in particular stood out, a man standing at the far end of a train platform. Barely visible, framed in haze, his hands in his coat pockets, his head tilted slightly like he was listening. But it wasn't the figure that made Caleb's lungs tight-knit was the background behind him. Graffiti on the cement wall that said in smeared red letters, ***, you were right all along. ***, he hadn't told anyone. Not about the photo, not about the motel, not about the voice on the cassette saying his name in the voice of someone who should have never known it. But someone had written that. Someone else knew. That meant he wasn't the only one. He started checking old news reports, local broadcasts from the 90s and early 2000s, anything from within a 10-mile radius of that motel. He filtered by the word unsolved, then by the word missing, then inconclusive. One case echoed back, almost too clean to be real. July 8, 1998. 5 children disappeared during overnight stay at summer behavioral retreat. All diagnosed with sleep disorders, dissociative tendencies, or classified trauma. 4 returned with memory loss. 1 never came back. The photo attached. 2. The article showed 5 children sitting in a circle under a canopy of trees. 1 girl, eyes too wide. 1 boy, blurry, mid-motion. And in the center, Caleb, 11 years old, legs crossed. Holding a red cassette tape, the names were redacted in the public version of the story. Caleb tried FOIA requests. Dead ends. He called the publication. Disconnected, then an email came in, no return address. No text, just an attachment. Found footage from 20 years ago. It was corrupted, mostly static, audio warped, like something dragged underwater. But in brief flashes, he could see it. The kids in a room, all wearing headphones, eyes open but vacant. A man's voice saying numbers in a slow, methodical tone. A phrase repeated, not here, you're not here, you're not here. At timestamp, 11:43. The video cut to static. Then resumed, handheld and shaking. Running footsteps, a glimpse of a broken mirror on the floor. A reflection with no source. Then a boy whispering into the camera. If you find this, tell them we remembered. Tell them we didn't forget. We tried T. Mechanical type. There are 23 of you left. Not all of you are real. He started noticing them everywhere. On the subway, on park benches, in waiting rooms. People with that same look, a flicker of recognition that never quite made it. To the eyes, one handed him a napkin once, while he stood in line for coffee. Said nothing. Just passed it to him and walked out the door. On the napkin, written in smeared pen, she's not Hannah. He began watching everyone. No. One blinked when they should have. Eyes didn't track movement naturally. Voices on calls had brief, mechanical warps in the middle of words. He thought it was paranoia until he met the observer. A man, maybe in his late 40s, showed up on his doorstep just past midnight. Pale, expressionless, dressed like a census worker or an IT technician, neutral, forgettable. He said his name was Reed, just Reed, no last name. He claimed to be from a monitoring department. Wouldn't say which one. I've been assigned to you since 1996, he said, stepping inside before Caleb could respond. This isn't the first time you've remembered. It won't be the last. Caleb didn't know whether to scream or listen, so he did both. Reed stood by the window, staring out like there was someone else watching them from the dark. There are layers, he said. Your life is the topsoil. Below that is memory. Below that is design. Below that is origin. Most people never reach the third. You were born in it. Caleb shook his head. I was born in Pennsylvania. Reed turned to him, and for the first time, Caleb saw fear not in himself, but in Reed. Your birth certificate was printed in 1993. Your existence began in 1986. There's a difference. Caleb felt his body pull inward. What does that mean? Reed reached into his coat and pulled out a stack of photographs. each one identical, a boy in a hospital gown, standing in front of a mirror, each photo dated a different year, 1992, 1997, 2003, 2011, 2020, same room, same pose, same boy. You've been rebooted 6 times, Reed said. Each time you get closer to the truth. Each time we lose more control. Caleb's voice was barely breath now. Reed didn't answer. Instead, he dropped the final photograph on the table. This one was different. It wasn't Caleb. It was Hannah, younger, thinner, wearing a hospital tag. Her mouth sewn shut. The caption read, Subject number 5B. Memory override, incomplete. She hadn't found him by accident. She was placed, she was failing. She's remembering too much, Reed said. They'll remove her soon. Caleb stepped back, heart thudding. Remove? You won't remember, Reed said simply. They'll extract her from your loop. You'll see a different face tomorrow. A new name, same function. No, she's not real, Caleb. She's code built from trauma you witnessed but weren't meant to process. No, she's remembered things I didn't. She's real, she's reactive. That's different. Reed moved to the door. If you keep going, the others will activate. You'll start to see more patterns, numbers, dreams that match other people's messages in white noise. But it won't be salvation, it'll be rupture. Caleb looked back at the postcard still sitting on the floor. Asterisk, asterisk, there are 23 of you left. Not all of you are real. Asterisk, asterisk, as Reed left, he turned one final time. The mirrors aren't reflections, Caleb, they're feeds. From below, the door closed, and the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was listening. Later that night, Caleb stared at the wall above his bed. For the first time, he noticed the faint outline of a symbol, Heroism by Paint and Time. A circle with a diagonal line through it. The same one he'd seen carved into the bench at the train station. The same one on the postcard. The same one in the corner of every old therapy notebook his mother had kept in the attic before she vanished. When he turned off the lights, the symbol glowed faintly, like it knew it was being seen, and in the silence that followed, he heard a whisper from the hallway mirror, not a voice this time, a number, asterisk, asterisk, 22. The loop had begun again. But this time someone else was watching, and so were you, asterisk, asterisk.